Been a while. Thank you so much for tuning in. Today, think we're talking about the end of Christianity that we were going to do. We're going to talk about the Presbyterians, the Methodists, and then the Baptists. We're going to talk about the Presbyterians first. And Devin, why don't you give us the statistics on them? You said you got some numbers for us.
I got a few numbers. What's going on, everybody? I hope you're all doing well, staying safe during what's going on in the world right now. I hope you're all listening to this safely from quarantine. Excuse me. Okay, so the deal is honestly, in the case of Presbyterians, the statistics are actually pretty obscure. For most of these guys, I've been able to find really solid statistics. All I've been able to find is that in 2018, there were registered 9,161 Presbyterians. I don't know if this is accurate. It seems like it wouldn't be, because the Methodists were 9 million and the Baptists are, a lot. But that's the stat. That's the only really stats that I could find in the situation. So the Presbyterians are interesting. They've got an interesting history that deals with a book of order and the Church of Scotland and Calvinism. Benny, you wanna talk about them a little bit?
Resident Presbyterian. So Presbyterianism, like most Protestant denominations, differs itself from the other denominations by church governance. You mentioned the Book of Order and some that we had mentioned in previous episodes. Basically, to sum it all up, Presbyterianism has the system of government. It's called plural elders, which means that there is not one person that holds, quote unquote, all the power within the church. There are multiple people in the church that have the same amount of quote unquote power, which are called elders. And that is actually how the early church in the Bible was organized. The congregation would elect its elders, and it's kind of like a checks and balances system, because the congregation selected its elders, and the elders ruled the church, and then if the congregation could also, I believe, vote out members. So it's very checks and balances, and the whole point of this system is not to have one person with all of the power. And so in Presbyterian circles, the Presbyterian churches make the distinction between ruling elders and teaching elders. So ruling elders are the people who actually run the church, and then teaching elders are the people that you'll see behind the pulpit on Sundays. And then the Book of Order, it gets really specific about per every teaching elder that you have at a church, you have to have, I think, three ruling elders. And so basically the Book of Order is a book that Presbyterians use. Pretty much every Presbyterian uses a version of it. And it's just, it outlines everything from how many elders you can have per the size of the congregation, how to make motions, ask a member of the congregation what rights and laws can you follow, what rights do you have. And its aim is to just keep the order in the church.
Okay, so you're a Presbyterian, correct? Is that what I'm getting? But besides the system of governance, which is pretty interesting, what I'm kind of understanding from this is that it's a pretty standard denomination besides the kind of rejection of centralized power. Yes?
Also, there is a sort of a hierarchy in a way, though it's not, you can't really compare it to the Catholic hierarchy or the Anglican hierarchy. So each individual church belongs to a presbytery. And then, so for example, I go to my local Presbyterian church, and my local Presbyterian church belongs to the Presbytery of the Southeast, right? That's who my church reports to. And then the Presbytery of the Southeast, they report to, I think they call it the General Assembly. So that's how so the church is not completely autonomous, which is something we'll talk about when we get in a little bit. The church is not completely autonomous. We're still held accountable to the, people above us.
And so besides that, though, it's Protestant. So the basic Protestant kind of set of ideas and beliefs are kind of in place in this situation. So non-Catholic Christian belief, correct?
Correct. And Presbyterians do tend to be more liturgic than other Protestant denominations, or, well, really particularly more liturgic than Baptist. But it's not it really comes down to the church.
Okay.
Some Presbyterian churches play it super high church, and they go heavy on their liturgy. But once again, the Protestant view on liturgy is that you use it as a symbolism, not a means of obtaining grace, like the Catholics do. And some churches, like my church, is pretty low church. We're not super heavy on liturgy.
I have in my notes, I wrote down, and it might have been terribly insufficient, but that's fine. First of all, my understanding is that I'm just kind of using it as an interview format because I have you here. Otherwise, we'd probably just be talking about
Right.
it just normally. But
Absolutely.
my understanding is that hymns and singing are incredibly important in the Presbyterian system. Is this the case? Can you
Yeah.
sing us something?
There, not every Presbyterian is the same. So kind of how you have Protestant denominations, you have Presbyterian quote unquote denominations. Here where I live, the most prevalent ones are the PCA, Presbyterian Church of America, and the USPCA, the United States Presbyterian Church of America. But there's also like the EPC, which is what I belong to. There's also Orthodox Presbyterian Church. There's Cumberland Presbyterian Church. And there is one particular type of Presbyterians who I cannot remember off the top of my head, but they believe that you should only sing psalms and worship. So they have this thing called a
What?
psalter. Yeah.
Mm.
So they have, if you go to pretty much any church that you go to, you have a hymnal, and the hymnal has songs that people sing at church, obviously. And most of those songs were written by a person, by some dude outside of the canon of scripture. A lot of the hymns contain scripture. Most hymns, like, they contain biblically sound doctrine and ideas that we sing, but it's a song and a tune. Really, it's a lyric, a text written by somebody, 200 years ago. Whereas there's some Presbyterian churches that believe that you should only use psalters, and a psalter is basically like a hymnal, but every selection in the psalter is a psalm set to music.
Okay.
And
Okay.
I met a couple guys when I was in undergrad that they played hardball. Like they will not budge on it. They'll say, nope, you can only sing the scripture and for worship. Period. Like that's it.
That's
Okay.
interesting, mostly because, unless I'm mistaken, there's nothing in the Bible that says anything even slightly like that. Unless I'm mistaken, I could be.
What-
That's just kind of like,
Yeah,
I'm not sure. I know that the Catholics also do that when it comes to when they sing. It's really just a hymnal, like from the Book of Psalms put to music, pretty much. I mean, they do
Well,
have other stuff, but like they read their
Yeah.
readings, and then they have like a psalm, and then they have like a worship song. So
yeah.
Am I misunderstanding this? Because
Yeah.
my understanding was that like these, like the really hardcore ones, are just like reject music unless it's religious. Did I misunderstand?
Yes, you did misunderstand.
Okay.
So like I've never had a conversation with one of these individuals. I met a couple, but we never really got to the nitty gritty of it. So, and I mean, there's some denominations like the Church of Christ that will not permit musical instruments in their worship service, so
Oh,
they
yeah.
sing a cappella
no
only.
stringed
Okay.
instruments.
Why?
That I don't know. I
I-
haven't. I'll look that up real
uh,
quick. I'll look that up while we're discussing.
I think their argument is that the Bible never specifies to use instruments in the New Testament. I could be wrong about that, but I think that's where they get that from, and I think that's where this particular branch of Presbyterianism gets their ideology about the psalters from. That we should only use, we should only use the the Psalms to worship and corporate worship. And I mean, I could go for hours about how they could be wrong, or how I believe they're wrong, but that's
I mean,
just
yeah, the question isn't really right or wrong. It's just I was curious
Yeah.
about the biblical precedent of it. Ever since we started doing these podcasts,
So-
one thing that I've been really interested in is the fact that a lot of the stuff that we talk about as being set in stone doctrine for these religious beliefs, or excuse me, for these systems, is not much of it is actually found in the text of the Bible. It's like really,
Right.
it seems like
Yeah.
stuff that was kind of tacked on. And I don't mean
Yeah.
that in a demeaning way, audience. I really don't. I'm just kind of trying to talk. But you guys know what I mean, right? I'm just saying, like, that's the impression that it gives me. And especially like when we get into Baptist, there's a lot of stuff that I don't think there's any biblical precedent for some of the stuff that we're going to talk about. And so that's why I asked if there was any biblical
So,
precedent
I mean,
for that.
obviously, there's biblical precedent for the act of worshiping God, right?
Of course,
So-
yeah. No, it goes without saying. Yeah.
Right. And so, see it is that God tells us to worship Him, and God does give us parameters as far as how we should worship Him, but that has more to do with the posture and the character of the individual. um versus like the actual, like, should we have a choir, should we not have a choir, should we do a cappella, should we do an a cappella? I don't, from a personal point of view, and I think a lot of Protestants would agree with me, like, I don't think God is nitpicky to that extent, but obviously there's people out there that would disagree with me. There's nothing wrong with only singing the psalters, and there's nothing wrong with only doing a cappella music.
Yeah.
Some a cappella music,
Honestly,
especially religious ones, is gorgeous, absolutely beautiful, because you got to use
yeah,
basically the vocals as instruments. So not hating,
Yeah,
not
absolutely.
hating. Some of it
Oh,
sounds beautiful,
I'm
especially when you
just,
listen to like the Catholics sing, like the Catholic kind of hymnals that they do. Gorgeous.
Your Gregorian chants, even those are
yeah,
pretty good.
Yeah, it's beautiful, amazing stuff. Like
yeah,
it's just, I don't know. So, actually, as far as God being nitpicky, I was actually listening to something. I was listening to Mythos by Stephen Fry. Okay, I was listening to the audiobook of it, and something that struck me as interesting. And we're gonna get into. I don't know if we're gonna get into mythology, because Greek mythology is mythology. I'm not sure, but I will say that one thing that I thought was interesting is the Greek gods were incredibly, incredibly nitpicky. Like
right,
people would do burnt offerings to the Greek gods, and if it wasn't good enough, they would get straight up offended. And so I'm glad Christianity didn't, port that over. You know
yeah,
what I mean? So like if you do it a little bit wrong or something like that, or your posture is not completely correct, then you could like offend, the seeing all knowing deity of the universe. But
yeah.
that's just a little side note from something I was studying for something else.
Yeah.
Like, don't get it twisted. Like, there are things that the God of the Bible is nitpicky about. You know what I'm saying?
Well, I
There,
mean, isn't it the first like 2 or 3 commandments that like basically go into like don't worship any other god? Like I am God.
yes,
Like yeah. So it's like the first
Yes.
2 or 3,
yep.
I think. Thou
Mhm.
shalt not kill is seriously like the 7th commandment or something. Like
Well, I mean, the like salvation, for example. Like, God is super nitpicky about salvation. Only through Jesus can we be saved. So that's an example. But as far as like worship, um, and really as far as like the particulars and the idiosyncrasies of each denomination, I don't think God is super, super nitpicky. So we have a saying in my church, in the essentials unity, and the non-essentials, oh my gosh, what is it?
it's a C word. It's a C word. I saw it. It's oh
In the
my,
essentials unity,
in the essentials unity and the
charity,
non-essentials, it's it's like not community. It's
charity. I think
no,
it's charity.
charity was the last one, I think. I'm
Is it?
looking it up.
Yeah,
I
in the
saw it. I definitely saw it in the
essentials unity and the
it,
non-essentials liberty. Is it liberty or freedom?
no.
Maybe.
Yes, actually, you're
That's what
right.
I
In
got.
essentials unity
Yeah.
and non-essentials liberty and all things charity.
I think
I actually was
charity.
really
So,
impressed when I saw that. I thought it was really cool.
so what that's saying is like, you know, as long as we have the core tenets of Christianity down, we're free to fight about so like the way I've heard it explained is, so you know how we have like the federal government and then we have state government.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Hmm.
Core doctrine would be the federal government. Those are the hard lines. If you go too far north, you're no longer in America, you're in Canada. You know what I'm saying? If you go too far south, you're in Mexico. It's a federal border. State laws are what I would call the non-essential. If I live in Tennessee and if I keep going north, I'll hit Kentucky. I'm still in America. I'm still a Christian. I'm just in a different state,
Mm.
Okay, that makes
and that's
sense.
okay.
Yeah, that's a pretty good. That's easy to
That's a good
understand.
analogy. Yeah, definitely. That's a
Yeah.
great analogy. The I like to think personally that when God's hanging out, upstairs, and he's all like, "Yo, like these people are praying and it's awesome," or whatever. He's like, I'd like to think that he would not have any problem if you're in Gangsta's Paradise saying prayers in the streetlights, or if you're in a church with a congregation. I like to think personally that he wouldn't care about either. The point is that you're doing it,
Yeah.
and that you're partaking in your spiritual
Yeah.
growth. You know what I mean?
Mhm.
That's what I
100%.
like to think. So
Yeah.
And like I said, that's the beauty of Protestantism. Like, there is, like, if you're Catholic, much love to all my Catholic friends. If you're Catholic, that's it. You're gonna be worshiping this way, forever. Every time, you can't go to a Catholic church that essentially varies too differently.
Oh yeah,
But
for
in the
sure.
Protestant church,
Yeah.
like I said, you want to rock and roll, let's go rock and roll. You want to do a cappella, you can do that. You want to do choir and piano or organ, let's do it. So there's more variety as far as the systems of government and the ways of worship. Because listen, man, my church only does choir and piano right now, but I've been to churches where we rock and roll. I've been to churches where there's just some dude with the acoustic. Like, it's
I've been to rock
in
and roll
that
church.
regard.
I enjoyed it very
Dude, rock
thoroughly.
and roll church.
I have
It's
visited.
cool, man.
Rock and
Yep.
roll.
I visited a church that literally has like a stage and a smoke machine. I visited.
Nice.
I visited a church that had like the cello and violin blasting, like a full orchestra almost, like a little mini orchestra
That's cool.
with a full choir, and piano and organ. They were going all out. And then I've been to churches where it's like two guys in the corner with an acoustic guitar, a bass, and like singing.
So my two favorite is one. I went to a very, very large church in California, and they had a straight up, like, it was a rock band up there, and that dude, like, come on, I think most of us can honestly say that Christian rock is not maybe most of our first choice.
Yeah.
Maybe it is
no.
for you guys. I don't know, but
No.
I think a lot of us probably feel that way, but it's a kind of necessary kind of thing. So this band goes on there. The preacher gets up and he does this thing, and he's like, yo, this is the lesson. This is the lesson. Now introducing Crucifixion in Space, or whatever they were called, which Crucifixion in Space is actually a Marilyn Manson song, but that's besides the point. Anyway, so they get up there, and dude, they were rocking out. The guitarist starts shredding. He's got like a Gibson Les Paul Gold Top,
Ooh.
right? Just like, I was like, dude, shredding for Jesus. All right, I like this. These guys are getting down. Like, it was awesome. They were killing it. But the second one, I never went into. I never got up the nerve to go into. But down the street from my apartment in Los Angeles, there was a I don't know how to describe it politically correct. I don't want to offend anybody, but it was a gospel church with primarily African Americans. And I used to go out. Yeah, Black Gospel. Okay, so I used to go out there every Sunday because they would be in there a cappella, I used to go out and listen every single Sunday because I loved the sound of their voices.
Yeah.
And I really wish I would have had the nerve to go in, but they were all African American. I felt like there's a good chance I wouldn't be welcome, or something like that, or I'd make them feel weird. So I just decided to leave it alone. But I love sitting out there and listening to them. So
they're not scared if you went in.
No, they probably wouldn't have cared if you did.
They would have like, man, come on up.
I highly doubt they would have cared, but it is something. You do got to understand. I lived in a very bad area of Los Angeles, and
was it anywhere close to Compton?
Compton was maybe 30-45 minutes away.
Okay.
But I could walk to Crenshaw.
Okay.
So I was in a bad area.
Yeah,
it was right by USC.
Shout out to Deaky. Deaky, that's where Deaky comes from. Is from
Deaky's from Compton, right?
Yeah, he's from Compton.
Yeah.
So
CP2.
So if he ever comes back on,
yeah,
miss that
dude,
boy.
it's it was a bad area, and so like I just didn't know, because like I also had experienced some violence against some of my personal property. I found out later, I didn't know at the time, I found out later that it wasn't because of me. It was actually because of a case of mistaken identity. They thought I was somebody else, or they thought my car belonged to somebody else, because it was my car. They were popping my tires and stuff like that, and they thought I was someone else, which is fine. But anyway, it was just I don't know. I'm kind of shy, so I didn't do it, and to this day, I regret it, because I really would have loved to have gone in there and seen all these people just like swaying and clapping and just like, oh my God, I think it would have been gorgeous. But
absolutely. So for my one contribution for this podcast.
All right, here it is.
I have a website pulled up that was telling me the different there's the two main ones are the PCUSA, which is the Presbyterian Church USA, and then the Presbyterian Church of America, that's the PCA. The PCUSA is the quote more liberal side, and then the PCA, just the Presbyterian Church of America, is conservative. They're having a bit of back and forth because the PCUSA allowed for the ordination of homosexuals,
And women.
and women, both men and women, including non-celibate homosexuals. I'm not sure what the significance of non-celibate homosexuals is, but
Well,
Can
according to a
explain
lot
that.
of sects, according to a lot of things, if you're
oh, true,
homosexual sex, you're committing a mortal sin. So
Yeah, we'll
true.
talk about that.
And then the PCA only ordains men in obedience in the New Testament standard for those who rule the church and teach doctrine. That's in quotes there. But there was like a case of mistaken identity, like you were just saying, between the PCA and the PCUSA, because that came into like a quote scandal whenever the PCUSA allowed for the ordination of homosexuals and women. Because the reporter said the PCA, and then they were like, whoa, 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 hold on, that's the PCUSA. But also, another
that's the
thing
PC.
is, the PCA teaches that Scripture is inerrant. Like, there's nothing wrong with it. The PCUSA does not teach that Scripture is inerrant.
Yeah.
Let's see. Another thing that says here is, I'm not sure about this. The PCUSA says church property belongs to the denomination. The PCA, the church property belongs to the local congregation without any right or revision whatsoever to any presbytery or general assembly.
Yeah.
So go ahead.
I mean to cut you off, like that actually is a huge scandal in the Presbyterian world. The property, but let me talk about. So yes, like the PCUSA will ordain women as elders, and they will ordain practicing homosexuals as elders. As elders. The PCA will not ordain women, and they will not ordain practicing homosexuals. And so the whole territory thing is a big deal because there's been a lot of cases where there's a congregation that is PCUSA and they want to leave the PCUSA to go to like the PCA or the EPC. So, but they don't own the building.
True.
Else.
And so if they move, they
And
have to basically find another place.
Yeah, because the denomination owns that
Wow.
building. And
Wow.
and that has been like a huge controversy. So like the PCA and the EPC, where I am, we own our building. And in PCA churches, they own their building because the PCA split off from the USPCA. Essentially, is what it was. And then that's when they started, getting into this whole thing. We're like, holy crap! Well, now we have to find a building because we don't own our building. So they made that specifically into the rules, and same thing with the EPC, that like the local congregation owns the building. So if for whatever reason, like, oh well, now we want to be Methodist or whatever, we can take our building with us.
Then here we have some social issues. I guess we should talk about them. I'm afraid to, because they're really heavy hitters there. The three big ones. The PCUSA and the PCA have they're super split on the three big ones: abortion, divorce, and homosexuality. We did talk about the homosexuality. PCA simply just says homosexual practice is a sin. And then the PCUSA in 2010 expressed that no consensus in the interpretation of Scripture on issues of same-sex practice. So that's whenever they can be ordained. But when it comes to divorce, the PCA teaches that divorce is a sin except in the cases of adultery or desertion. The PCUSA in 1952 moved to amend sections of the Westminster Confession, eliminating innocent parties language, broadening the grounds to include no-fault divorce. And then for abortion, PCA teaches that all abortions are wrong, e.g. abortion would terminate the life of the individual, the bearer of God's image. So, like, yes, all abortions are wrong. The PCUSA teaches that abortion can be, quote, morally acceptable, end quote, though it ought to be an option of last resort. I'm not sure what the last resort would mean. Like if the mom's about to die, maybe? I'm not exactly sure what last resort means.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure that's a last resort type situation.
They,
I don't
they,
think any religious organization can come out and say, "Go get all the abortions you want." I don't,
Yeah.
especially under
yeah,
Christianity.
they won't say that, but in my experience and what I've researched is that the USPCA plays it pretty loosey goosey when it comes to abortion.
Hmm.
Um, so they're pretty much, you know, they're pretty politically left leaning and theologically left leaning, and so they say that kind of stuff like only if it's last resort, but they'll look the other way. But
See, I'm sorry, Benny. Go
go
ahead.
ahead. That's all I was gonna say.
Oh, okay. Well, that's actually something that I want to get into on the next episode. And if you want to have that episode or not, I'm not sure. But
Like title
basically,
issues
huh?
in relation to denominations.
The episode where we kind of just like go into some of the other stuff that we didn't get to, like for example,
Yeah.
I though this brings up something that I find interesting, and that's that divorce is a civil thing and abortion is a medical thing. And I find it just very interesting that like that's even something that churches rule on. You know what I mean? Like that they had to have a convention basically to talk about it. I don't know. It's
Yeah.
weird.
Well, and I had this conversation with a coworker of mine about a year ago. So, and I'm not a legal scholar, okay, but laws don't exist in a vacuum. I mean by that is that there is most of the times, there's going to be an ethical or moral standing behind a law, right?
Religion
So
does not have the monopoly at all when it comes to morality. In fact, I would argue the complete opposite.
you can't legislate morality, but you can tax it. So, but I mean, can we agree that murder is wrong?
Yes, but I think that murder is wrong was something we as humans knew way before the the Ten Commandments. Excuse me, guys. I'm sorry.
Mm.
No, I agree. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like, the Bible isn't the only religious document that'll tell you that murder is wrong. You know, that concept of murder being wrong, it's universal. It's
Yes,
universal.
it's ingrained in us. Yes, absolutely.
Ingrained in us. And whether you believe in God of the Bible or whatever version of God you want to believe in, we pretty much every human believes that murder is wrong. And so that's what I'm saying. Like that law of it's illegal for you to kill people has an ethical backing behind it.
But yes, and even that law, which is if anytime we're bringing up laws, we're always going to bring up the first one is thou shalt not murder. But even that has exceptions. It has rules when it comes to it. There's situations in which you can kill somebody point blank and not get convicted for it, especially in Texas. Just saying.
That wouldn't be murder though.
That would be ending somebody else's life, which is murder.
Right. Murder and homicide.
Well, homicide is a criminal term. Murder is a ubiquitous term for taking somebody else's life. I mean, like, or like if it's a lot of people, it's like a slaughter or whatever. You know what I mean? Like, I don't know. So we'll go into this next episode, dude, because I want to get down in the dirt with you on some of this stuff. I think it'd be really fun.
It gets it's super, and like I said, I'm not a legal scholar, but it gets super interesting because so there's homicide, and then homicide breaks down to well, you have manslaughter, you have murder, and then you have murder in degree. So it does get down to it. But and I would love to talk about the abortion issue. I really would. I think it's really interesting because it's dividing our country and it's dividing our churches. So let's put a pin on this topics.
Sure.
Yeah.
And then I think we should move on to Methodist because we're like halfway through.
Maybe you can go ahead and just give me a little bit of props for my method.
That's
the worst segue in the history of segues.
Nah, it's all right. It's good. So, do you have any numbers, or does anyone want to start anything? Because I only really know kind of one thing.
I got numbers. You know I got numbers.
I know you got numbers.
I got to serve some kind of purpose on this podcast besides to rile Benny up.
Oh, my gosh.
All right. Okay. All right. Cool. So, Methodist. what I found is that as of 2018, 3.6 percent of the U.S. population is Methodist, and that consists of 9 million people. Now, as we've talked about ad nauseum on this thing, generally statistics are falling on Christianity and religion in most cases, in general, across the board, as we go into what Benny describes it. And I love it, and I've used in conversations with other people of post-Christian society. So, but that's what we got. We got 9 million people, which means there's a lot of them, a lot of Methodists, and 3.6% of the U.S. population, which is not a number to sniff at. Methodists are very interesting, and I'm going to lead this one off because I really, I admire some of the stuff I read about them. So,
Yeah, absolutely.
basically, Methodists, as far as I can tell, are they're a church that's based in logic, okay, using logical ideas. And now one could argue probably pretty effectively that a lot of the ideas we discuss on here, there's a little gap with the logic, but so John Wesley, who, if I recall correctly, started it. Correct me if I'm wrong, please.
Yes.
Taught four key points fundamental to the Methodist Church. So I pulled this off a website earlier, and I should have actually got the website on there so you guys could go look it up. But number one, a person is free not only to reject salvation, but also to accept it by an act of free will. Wow.
Mhm.
Methodists don't hate atheists, as far as I can tell, unless I read that wrong. Number two, all people are obedient to the gospel according to the measure, who are obedient to the gospel according to the measure of knowledge given them will be saved. So it's talking about people who maybe weren't exposed to Christianity. And so they kind of have a different level of exposure. The Holy Spirit assures a Christian of their salvation directly through an inner experience, which is assurance of salvation. I'm not exactly sure what that means. Maybe you guys can enlighten me. And then fourth, Christians in this life are capable of Christian perfection and are commanded by God to pursue it. And that is an incredibly fascinating thing, because most denominations, if you go talk to them, the first thing they say is that you are human, therefore you cannot reach the perfection of Jesus. All you can do is try. So these guys, I guess, are saying that you can, and it's possible, and you should, and God ordained that you should. You should be like Jesus. That's what I got from it. So I found it incredibly interesting. They also have a huge focus on charity, which I like as well. So you guys can take it from me.
Methodism. I attended a Methodist church for a couple of years. They, you know how in the Presbyterian world the congregation elects their elder?
For sure.
In the Methodist world, they don't. In the Methodist world, the pastor, well, it's a single pastor. Most Methodist churches are going to be single pastor churches, and the pastor is placed there by the denomination. So the congregation doesn't really get a say in who their pastor is. And I believe that pastors are on rotation. So I think for like every 10 years, the pastor rotates. But yeah, the congregation doesn't really get they don't really choose who their pastor is. I think they can ordain deacons, but they don't really, ordain pastors. And so the United Methodist Church, and this is where things get a little interesting. So the United Methodist Church is actually very much so theologically and politically left-leaning. Well, no, I'm sorry. Let me take that back. Let me correct myself. Actually, yes, they are. I'm sorry about that. Because Methodist churches are allowed to ordain women, and a lot of them ordain homosexuals. So which is why Hillary Clinton, I believe she endorses Methodism. I don't know if I don't know if she would call herself a Methodist, or I don't know if she would actually belongs to a Methodist church, but she's down with it basically, because Methodists ordain women, and I'm pretty sure they ordain homosexuals. Now, in all the Methodist churches that I've ever set foot in, I'd never seen a female pastor. To my knowledge, a homosexual pastor. But to my knowledge, yes, they can. They can, and that's almost. And when we talk about Baptists, you're gonna see the juxtaposition. So it's interesting because let's say that you're in a Methodist church, and everybody in there is not down with female eldership, and all of a sudden, boom, you have a female pastor, and you have no say about it.
Oh yeah.
It can get pretty dicey. But overall, Methodism does tend to be pretty solid in their theology. In my opinion, anyway. I guess it's an opinion thing. And as far as Christian perfectionism, what John Wesley was getting at is that we should strive to be like Jesus, but
Yeah.
Christianity is the religion of trying.
Yeah, the problem with the word perfection there, it says I don't remember the verse, but it says be perfect as I am perfect. The word perfect there's a bunch of different words that it means in Greek, because the Greek word is whatever it is, but it means perfect, but it also means complete or whole. So it doesn't exactly mean to be specifically exactly perfect as God. Just be whole as God is whole, be complete as God is complete. You don't have to actually be perfect. So I'm guessing maybe that's a little mistranslation that they picked up from the verse there.
So, like I said, Christianity is the religion of trying, which means that you have to try to be like Jesus. But we know for a fact that we will never be like Jesus. You know, we have to try our best. We have to try our best to not sin and to live a righteous life. But we're going to fail because Jesus told us we were going to fail. But we have to try. We have to strive for that. We have to keep striving. We have to keep striving, and one day we will be perfect. But this is not a justification to sin, because Paul said, "Shall we sin so that grace may abound?" By no means. Christian perfectionism. That's what John Wesley was really getting at, because you and me know that here in a little bit I'm probably gonna sin.
I'm sinning right now.
Exactly.
I'm eating chicken. That's a sin, probably. I don't know.
No,
I don't know about any of that now.
I'm reading on an electronic device. That's probably maybe
not a sin.
There's a picture of somebody's legs and an ad on it, and I see that legs. And I'm like, oh, those are some nice legs. And I'm like, oh, that's a. I'm kidding. I'm joking. I'm joking, of course, guys. I'm joking, of course.
Yeah.
And the other joke I had was, if Christianity is the religion of trying, then that means Yoda is not a Christian, my friends.
Oh, true. That's all based on the New Age movement there. So.
Oh, don't listen, Master Yoda. Get you started. Okay.
He said there is no try. There is do or do not, my dude. Like, I didn't write it. Okay. Yoda's not in
context. Don't take his words out of context. What he was saying is you have to commit. Because Luke wasn't like, he was like, hey, race the X into the swamp. And Luke was like, oh, like I don't know, I'm trying. And Yoda was saying, do or do not, there is no try. What he was saying is like, commit to it and recognize the fact that you failed, but commit to it.
This is not regular Lorecast.
Can you do your Luke Skywalker voice one last time for me? That was good.
It's a terrible impersonation. It's like,
no, do it. Kind of, it's like, I can't do it.
I can't really race the X.
I can't let this X-wing. All right. Yeah. Okay, I'm sorry, guys. Okay, sorry for derailing it like that. Okay,
theology of Yoda.
Dude, Yoda is one of the coolest characters ever. Okay.
Yes.
You were asking about, you don't exactly know what the Holy Spirit assures you. It just, from what I can tell, assurance of salvation is just something you know in your heart. I'm not sure what the Holy Spirit assures you. I mean, whenever Christians are taught is that the Holy Spirit is the one that lives in you, and that, so whenever they say, oh, let Jesus in your heart, they're actually talking about the Holy Spirit. And
so
I
guess the whole Trinity, yeah.
I guess they don't.
We're not gonna do the whole Trinity debate again.
Oh my gosh! But they don't have. I guess they don't have like a. Oh, I guess they have the once saved, always saved kind of thing. Because I think that's what maybe.
So assurance of salvation is something that our Catholic friends don't have. Because assurance of salvation means that.
Oh yeah, it's Protestant only. I see.
For a fact that I am saved, right? I accepted Jesus Christ as my Lord and Savior, and I'm following his ways, though I'm not perfect. I know for a fact. I can say this. I can say that I am saved, and I know that for a fact because Scripture tells me to. A Catholic can't say that.
Really?
Catholics don't have assurance of salvation. They're not, according to their catechism, they're not allowed to affirm their salvation. Whereas Protestants, I don't know about the Greek Orthodox Church. I haven't looked into it with them, but most Protestants will I'll tell you straight up, yeah, I'm saved, and I know that for a fact. And the once saved always saved. So that comes back to, like,
that's a Baptist thing, honest. That's what I had learned as a
not
young
just a
child.
Baptist thing.
I've been saved twice, just so you guys know.
Oh gosh,
You saved
Insurance.
twice.
Insurance, man.
Gosh. So it's not just a Baptist thing. Presbyterians do it. Methodists do it. Pretty much most Protestant denominations do it. Particularly Baptists and Presbyterians because of the whole, like, Calvinism thing.
Yeah.
But I believe Methodists believe in once saved always saved. But it gets really dicey because I don't know. I personally think Arminianism is inconsistent, but that's because I'm a Calvinist. So and most Methodists, they follow Arminianism.
What's Arminianism?
Which means that, like, so Arminianism to put it all in a nutshell, I think it's really complicated. To put it all in a nutshell, you have Arminianism and Calvinism. Arminianism says that you have to choose Christ. You have to choose God. Calvinism says that no, you can't choose God. God has to choose you. And there's these endless ramifications for both of those statements. Like I said, this is just in a nutshell. So most Methodists are Arminians, so they believe that you have to consciously choose God. But then it gets dicey because, like, well, I can choose God, but can I choose to not choose God? Like, can I choose to choose God and then be like, never mind, and then walk away from the faith? So it gets, the once saved, always saved.
Yeah.
Once saved, always saved. It's another way of saying if you truly have accepted Jesus Christ into your heart, you will not be saved. That's called perseverance of the saints in Calvinism. And I believe I'm sorry, go ahead.
I can understand why that would be a big deal, though, because I mean, like, apostasy is it used to be punishable by death. So yeah, I can understand, like, if you walk in and then you do what you need to do and you're saved, and then you're like, you know what, peace out. Yeah. I'm gonna go be a Satanist. You know what I mean? I can kind of understand why that would be a big deal and a problem.
Yeah, absolutely.
People would argue that if you are saved, quote unquote, and then be like, never mind, I'm gonna go be a Satanist. Then I would argue, and a lot of Protestants would argue that a lot of Christians really would argue that you were never saved to begin with.
Oh no, I do. Sorry, I don't agree with that even slightly. I don't agree. I'm sorry. If you don't want to get into it right now, we don't have to. But the fact is I do not believe that. And the reason,
go ahead, give the reason. I'll give you mine.
Oh gosh.
No. I'm not trying to debate. I'm not either. Okay.
Yeah. You like the logic behind it.
You're such a pretty guy, Benny. I like you. Okay, so check it out. All right. Here's the deal. The problem is that life happens. And so, like, for example, when I was in the Army, I knew a guy that was like a super hardcore Christian. Not like super hardcore, but he was a guy of faith. You know what I mean? Just like you guys are. And he was awesome. And what happened was he went to war. And he saw the horrors of war. And he came home and he said, no loving God would let that happen. There's no way. And the thing is this is uniquely, I can attest to the fact that it is very horrible. And so he came back an atheist. And there's no way in the world you would pull it out of me, no matter what torture, that when he did it, when he became a Christian and when he got saved or whatever other ritualistic thing he had to do in order to take care of it, that he didn't believe it and he wasn't a part of it. And you also could not ever pull it out of me that he wasn't justified after seeing the horrors of war, because some people see it and their faith grows stronger. Okay. But some people it's the exact opposite. I think that assuming that there is, that all of this is true and there is a God, I think God has to make allotments for that and has to understand that life does happen. And when you see a child get blown up because of a suicide vest they were forced to wear, that it's okay for you to say, okay, you know what? There's no way God would allow this to happen. Not a loving God, not a God that was like the way Jesus described him. There's no way, no how. Now, understand this isn't my personal experience. This is something that I got secondhand from a good friend of mine. So I'm not fighting. Basically, I'm not saying necessarily he's right or wrong. I'm just saying that that is something I noticed and something I feel strongly about, because apostasy is a huge deal for religions, but that's because they're trying to keep their numbers up. Apostasy, I would say, happens mostly because people experience life. They go out there, they get raped, they almost get murdered, they go to war, they do all this stuff, and they make their own decision. And that decision isn't always going to skew the way of the church, although a lot of times it does. And some people, as I said, come back with their faith even more affirmed and even stronger in their relationship with Jesus or whatever
Yeah.
deity they choose to accept. So that's kind of where I'm coming from with that. Please.
Yeah, there was a whole movie on that actually. It was
The-
Silence about
I've never seen that one.
the Catholic priests who go to Japan, and they the language barrier, so they like preach to the Japanese, then the government starts killing off the followers. And, like, they don't believe the same God you do because the language barrier. And then in order for the priests' followers to stop being killed, they have to apostatize. So like that's like the whole dichotomy of the movie. And it's called Silence because he never hears God until the very end.
Yeah. So the once saved always saved, and I'll say this, and we could debate this on a later episode. We're not gonna get into it. So the once saved always saved rebuttal, or really I don't want to say that word, response or logic behind the statements that you said, Devin, is that the Bible says that when Christ comes into your heart, you are a new creation. The old has passed away, right? And if this is true, if you are a new creation, and it is so true that Jesus Christ is the master of your life and the savior of your life, Jesus is more powerful than war. Jesus is more powerful than you. So what it's implied when you say that you can apostatize, that you can truly apostatize, what you're saying is that you're more powerful than God. That would be the rebuttal. Like I said, like this, what I just said has infinite ramifications. So, and I'll be more than happy to talk to you about this in our later episode or even off air.
We'll definitely get back to it, because I think can I just say I love having you on here because you are smart.
Oh, gosh.
I love arguing with smart people.
Smart.
It makes me happy.
I'm not smart.
You're pretty dang
Shut
smart.
up, you're smart.
Oh, you're pretty dang
Okay.
smart.
Dude, if you knew me,
Okay.
if you knew me outside this podcast,
Well, then call me sometime. Jeez.
Nah, you're cool outside the podcast.
Now, all right. So anyway, that conversation went south really quick.
I
As
get
in
it.
the Southern Baptist Convention where they hang out. The SBC, my friends. Thank you. All right. So now we are going. I'm gonna just take the reins a little bit on this again, if that's okay with you, gentlemen. Unless you have something you want to do.
No, I just I mean, we're just talking about Baptists in general, but you're probably going to go into it already, like the distinction between quote Northern Baptist, which is like every other Baptist, and then Southern Baptist.
We'll get into that. I'm just
Absolutely.
I just use the Southern Baptist because they're the most notable. And we'll give a quick history lesson, but guys, just so you know, basically what happened was the Northern Baptist and the Southern Baptist split over some civil issues. But in the South, the Southern Baptists they absolutely rule the land. Okay, like the Southern Baptists are the South. Although
essentially
Benny lives in the South and he's Presbyterian, so I'm not obviously saying that the only churches in the South are Southern Baptist. Please
No,
don't take
there's
it that's not what I'm
tons
saying.
of churches everywhere. You could throw a rock, even in Atlanta, where I live, which is probably one of the most liberal cities in the South, I would say. Like, the big cities are always liberal, quote, but like even in Atlanta, which is pretty liberal, I would say leftist. I don't know how to say it, but even there, you can still find a church at every corner. You could stand at one church front door and throw a rock, and you'll hit another church. So
From now on, every time you refer to Atlanta, I'm requiring you to call it Hot Atlanta. Thank you.
Oh gosh.
Hot Atlanta. All right.
Oh gosh.
So the
Atlanta.
Southern Baptists are they're the largest they're the largest Protestant denomination in America. Okay. So and then generally in Christianity, they're the second largest after the Catholic Church.
Oh gosh.
Okay. In America. So 5.3% of the American population self-identifies as Southern Baptist, and 21% of evangelical Protestants in the United States consider themselves to be Southern Baptists and identify as Southern Baptists. So obviously, there are a lot of Southern Baptists, and your boy, yours truly, Mr. Devin, I was actually raised Southern Baptist. So
I
this is a
too
little
was also raised. I was raised Independent Baptist and then Southern Baptist. We went from one church to the next.
nice. So this is a little personal to you, boy. I've been able to be a little attached, but this one's personal, which is all good,
Yeah.
and as it should be. So, do you guys want to go into the history?
Sure. I mean, I don't know much about the history. All I know is that it's a really early church. Not as early as Catholic or like some of the other ones, but like when it comes to America, they're pretty early.
Yeah. Well, I was gonna say, like, if we could explain first, like, what does it mean to be Baptist, or like what is that, and then I think we can go
Yeah.
into the history of
Let's see. I'll look up.
it.
I should know. I was raised Baptist. I should know what they do believe.
Is that okay, Devin?
Yeah, of course it's okay. Whatever you want, man. You're the boss.
Yeah.
I know that when it comes to Independent Baptist, that just means that Independent Baptists are local to each church and they govern themselves. But then Southern Baptist goes to a convention, which they kind of make decisions and like come together and like disperse it out to the rest of the Southern Baptists.
So the thing about Southern Baptists
It's interesting.
is really simple. If you want to describe their beliefs, it's really easy. Take the most conservative, and the Baptist, not necessarily Northern Baptist. This is just Southern Baptist. Northern Baptists are just kind of more a standard Protestant denomination.
Yeah.
And then kind of, I guess, Independent, which I actually just found out 5 seconds ago exists. And I'm hosting a podcast on this, so yay me. They're kind of more conventional, but in the case of the Southern guys, imagine the most conservative people you can think of. So your grandpa's grandpa, right? Those dudes, like that's the Southern Baptist. It's really the easiest way to describe it, because like you can like put up any issue you want. You can put up abortion, put up, well, not necessarily divorce, but you can put up homosexuality, you can put up all that stuff and easily have an idea of kind of what their structure is and what the belief system is structured around.
Yeah, even when it comes to divorce, honestly, from what I had seen from the church that I went to, if you were divorced, because divorce is such a big thing in the church, they say you cannot be a deacon. So like that's a higher up. You can't be a deacon if you've been divorced unless like specific cases. Even then, most of the time they don't do it. Like as far as I know, you can't be a pastor if you've been divorced. Because they hold it so structurally. So like anything, obviously with they're very right wing, opposed to like what we just talked about, the PCUSA.
So basically, what happens is back in the day, all the Baptists were they were kind of just one convention,
Oh, can I say like one thing just real quick?
Of course.
What's up? I just was looking up there. How we were talking about the sacraments that the Catholics had. That was the activity that God used to impart salvation. So that's the Catholics had the sacraments, but the Baptists do practice two things. They practice the believer's baptism, which is after you have been saved, you get fully dunked in the water, brought back up, and then the Lord's Supper or communion. So they do believe those are two faith obediences that they need to do. So they call them ordinances instead of sacraments. So they do believe a little bit differently, I suppose. But like that's like the two things that they really think that they really need to do.
Dude,
so
I never got dunked. I'm in trouble. All right. Excuse me. I'm gonna go get a swallow. No, I'm kidding. I'm sorry. I'm in a jokey mood tonight, guys.
No,
okay.
It's all good.
That's all good. No, what I was gonna say is that, and I know this might be like not controversial, but I know you guys are probably gonna disagree. But I think Baptist as a whole, like when you say the word Baptist or when you hear it online or just like on the radio or on the movies, I think there's people misunderstand what that means. I think they get more flack They get a lot of like flack, but I think it's because people don't understand what being Baptist means, and I don't think people truly understand what being Southern Baptist means.
I suppose,
So
but I mean, a few bad churches, like, the big one, Westboro Baptist back in the day, you know, one bad church gives the rest of the denomination a bad, bad
Hold
name.
my beer.
Oh gosh.
100%.
Hold my beer.
Okay.
Because no, that's in most cases, I'd agree with you. Absolutely 100% is true. Even if you're looking at something like Islam, which we will look at in a future podcast, just because some people use it as an excuse to blow themselves up in marketplace doesn't make every Muslim person bad. Of course not.
Yeah,
course not.
absolutely.
Okay. In the case of Southern Baptism, though, Southern Baptism has a very, very, very long and sketchy history. And it's really hard. I told you guys before we started recording to look at it impartially because it's okay. So get this. As I was saying before, back in the day, Northern Baptists and Southern Baptists were the same thing. Okay. The conversation, this is a very oversimplification of it. Go look into it if you want like the super hardcore version. It's well worth reading about. So the talk of abolition started coming up, right? Freeing the slaves. And the Northern Baptists were basically, because they're industrialized, right? I mean, the entire issue for the Civil War was slavery and the Industrial Revolution. The Northern guys are industrialized, the Southern guys are not. So what happens is they start talking about it and they're like, yo, these slaves might get freed, And the Southern Baptists are like, forget that, dude. Like, no, man. Like, no. Like, slavery, like it says in the Bible, you can have slaves, right? Or something. And they had their justifications or whatever. They fought tooth and nail as a religious order against abolition of slavery. When slavery was abolished anyway, with the Emancipation Proclamation, basically what they did was they rejected. They went in. They moved into segregation, and so African Americans could go to congregations, and they could go, but they sat in separate places, and they were preached different sermons. And those sermons, in my opinion, just my opinion, very, very, very tasteless. Their sermons were about how to be a better slave. Okay, so it was before abolition. The black people were allowed in there. They could go. They were taught how to be a better slave through religion. Okay, then abolition happened, and all these slaves had been raised Baptist, and they wanted to take a part in the overall, makeup of the church. And they were told no. Like, they were told, no way, dude. Like, you're not going to be a preacher here. You can barely walk in the door. They weren't into it. And so a little bit later, the Baptist kind of organization was taken over more by more liberal people. Okay, so like, I'm not talking about hardcore mega liberals. I'm just saying people that are a little bit more left leaning and a little bit more accepting towards things like minorities and things like that. And there was actually a power struggle because a lot of people, as you talked about earlier with the rotating was it deacons? I'm not sure. And then getting a woman and not being okay with it. You had people getting a black preacher over time and being really angry about it, and it causing a split in their church. And then basically it caused an even more conservative takeover a few years later. And that's where we're at now, is because basically, like, for a little while, Southern Baptists weren't quite as down with like the racism and as down with like because they hate homosexuals. Like Southern Baptists, like I've never talked to Southern Baptists in my life that, like, a practicing one that's down with gay people, right? There's not. And the reason is because over time they got even more and more conservative till they just went off the far end of the right wing spectrum, like off the gas tank on that one. And now we have what we have, and that's kind of how they are. And it's still a surviving and thriving belief system today, and it still abides by these ultra conservative views, which, but for some people that's great, for some people it's not so great. Mostly minorities and gays probably not fans of it, although I do know a lot of minorities that are Southern Baptist, and I know some gay people that are too. I don't know why. That's their decision, their spirituality.
Yeah. I was gonna say I'd probably associate it. It seems kind of like locked in the 1950s. I would almost say, because like for most Baptists as well as Southern Baptists, like the father is the head of the household. You're not going to find a woman pastor. You're not going to find a homosexual pastor. You're not going to find, you know, a lot of the liberal stuff. You're not going to find, you're not going to find abortion being talked about. And then it wasn't up until like what does it say here? 1995 that the convention voted to adopt a resolution in which it renounced its racist roots and apologized for its past defense of slavery, segregation, and white supremacy. So they must have had some sort of it was under George W. Bush that they met with the Southern Baptist Convention.
I didn't know that they had agreed to renounce it. So that's really
that
nice.
was pretty recent though. 1995. That was the year I was born.
It was really it's great. I have no doubt whatsoever in my head whatsoever, and I could be incorrect, so forgive me if I'm wrong, but I'm pretty sure most Southern Baptists probably are still down with a lot of that stuff.
Go
ahead, buddy.
So I'm not Southern Baptist, obviously, and I've never been Southern Baptist. I've never been Baptist at all. And what I'm about to say, it's gonna sound like in defense of Baptist, because like I feel like it kind of is in a way, because like I said previously, Baptists get very much caricature, like what you said, Nick. It's like you feel like all Baptists are stuck in the 50s. Like that, like I said, that's a very caricature.
Southern Baptists, just from what I've seen and like read about their history and what they believe.
Either Southern Baptists.
The Southern Baptists have had the magical ability to be on the wrong side of history at every single turn.
I think it's that word up front, Southern, that like.
Yeah, I'm talking about the Southern. I'm not talking about Baptists as a whole.
Yeah, I mean, but that's what I'm saying. Like specifically Southern Baptist. I mean,
I'm talking about Southern. Yeah,
but I don't know. That's what I'm saying. Like
Southern.
what I'm trying to say is like.
Here's what I'm.
Go ahead.
Can either of you tell me what does it mean to be Baptist?
You have to get baptized.
That yes, you do.
What's my award?
You place an emphasis
Incorrect.
on. I mean, obviously it means to be Protestant, but I mean they do believe like getting baptized after you're saved. That's
one of them.
And also to do communion. I was reading that as well. Like
What is the difference? What is the difference between a Baptist and a Presbyterian? Can anybody tell me?
Oh wow, got me.
All right,
got me.
Busted. All right, what's up, my dude? What's the difference between a Baptist and a Presbyterian?
If we're gonna
Presbyterians didn't support slavery.
They're American.
Get it.
They're American versus Presbyterian. Baptist and Methodist.
What is the Baptist system of church government?
Oh man, I'm not even sure about the Baptist church government.
What is the Southern Baptist system of church government?
I don't know. Nick, you know?
I should know. I'm pretty sure it's like
really.
It's just the regular. I think every church is sort of independent, but with Southern Baptists, they just go to a convention and talk about the issues and then bring it back to their church.
What does it mean to be part of the Southern Baptist Convention?
Leaders go to. Oh gosh! Wow.
All right, I get time this entire episode to be partial and to go off on somebody. And Benny's gonna skewer me right after. Okay.
Benny right now is like a college professor who like no one's been paying attention in class, and he's like, "Okay, since you all just want to get this over with, tell me about this."
Bro, we totally just failed the pop quiz.
Absolutely. And I was raised. I should know.
What Protestant? I'll say this. What Protestant denomination sends more missionaries on the field than any other one?
Oh, that's Baptist for sure. I'm pretty sure that's Baptist. They have like
Southern Baptist.
Southern Baptist. Yeah. I mean, like you were saying, evangelical. I've only heard that really been spoken to within the Baptist realm because I was raised that way. People don't really call it evangelical unless you're.
Missionaries makes it all this stuff okay?
No, that's not what I'm saying. I'm just saying like let's put this into perspective.
So they're a religious organization, which means that they do charity and other good stuff occasionally. I mean, all religious organizations in America really take part in that stuff. It's kind of a part of being a religious organization.
Yeah.
Don't our religious organizations also have a quote unquote dark side to them?
Yeah, all of them do.
Yes, but not to mention besides the slavery thing and besides the homosexual thing and besides all that, not to mention that the Southern Baptists also, guys, just so you know, also recently had a sex scandal. There was like thousands of preachers, excuse me, my bad, guys. There were like thousands of preachers or something that were molesting children, allegedly.
And I'm not justifying that.
It was
but what I am
recent too.
saying
That was
is,
really
like,
recent.
I mean, so the thing is, the thing that really bothers me is that like if in our society, and I'm not going to like try to rule one way or the other on what's correct or not. I'm just saying in our society, there is one principal evil, man. There is one thing that if you do it, you are the most evil son of a gun in the world.
according to who?
According to our current morality that we have agreed upon as a country. As I said, I am not trying to justify it or unjustify it either way. I am saying that if you run into a pedophile, your first option is probably to shoot them in the face.
According to who?
Dude, it's agreed upon.
Who agreed upon it?
I don't know, man. I don't know where it came from.
Agree on that. I didn't.
Although
agree
I
on
can't
that.
tell you legally why it's illegal to have sex with kids if we're really going to get that semantic with it.
Oh no, I agree
Oh.
with that. Like I agree that statutory rape it's illegal. Like we can.
But do you know why? Do you know why you're not supposed to have sex with children or dogs or corpses?
Because they don't
Because-
consent. They
Cannot give consent. It's a completely logical thing. So
No, and I agree 100%. What I'm saying is, like, to say that rape and statutory rape is the maximum evil. Like nobody voted on that. Nobody said, "Oh yeah, for sure."
I don't know. It's just kind of. I mean, I agree. I agree that like there wasn't one ruling body that said, "All right, guys, we all hate child molesters." Like that's not how it went. But
it is the one that does get the most media attention, I would say, as of now. When it comes to, like, oh, you stole some money, cool, good job. You killed someone. I mean, that's pretty bad, but it doesn't get as much airtime as if someone touches a child. Then it's going to be on the news for months, and you're probably going to die in prison.
Yeah, going to prison is a death sentence.
What I'm saying is this: murder on the first degree will get you more years in prison than statutory rape. Yet we murder thousands of kids every day at abortion clinics.
This is the next episode.
Yeah,
issue.
but to say
we're not going there right now, my dude.
We're going there right now.
Oh
gosh.
Huh? You want to go there now?
No. Oh no. Oh gosh.
No, it's not.
Oh.
Okay.
Here's what I'm saying.
Oh.
Like, let's put. Once again, I think Baptists get a bad rap because people don't put their history or their numbers or like the caricature that the media paints them as
But I'm not looking at the media, Benny. I researched this.
I think the problem is, like, what you're talking about is numbers as well, because there are so many Baptists. They are the ones who are out there the most. And so, like, when the light shines on anything Christian, it's probably going to be a Baptist.
Well, that's because people don't understand what being Baptist is.
Yeah.
Please explain. What is being Baptist?
The core tenet of being Baptist, what it basically comes down to is congregational autonomy. Yes, the baptism issue was a huge issue. So the precursor to Baptists were the Anabaptists. So back in even before the American Revolution, pretty much every Protestant, pretty much every Christian baptized their child. Like Presbyterians do it now, Catholics do it now, Lutherans do it. Pretty much everybody does it. The Anabaptists were groups like, I believe, the Quakers and the Mennonites who believed in credo baptism, which means that only believers should get baptized because there's no biblical precedent for an infant getting baptized. So that's one of the core tenets of being Baptist, is that you have to you get baptized as a believer. The other one is congregational autonomy, which means that the congregation is its own thing. It's sovereign. There is no body that rules over the local congregation. Like, for example, in Presbyterianism or in pretty much in any other denomination, there's a body or bishops or hierarchy that rules over the local church. Whereas Baptists would say, no, we run ourselves.
Yeah.
So
that's true.
And that's essentially
but
what being Baptist
at the same time, it's not the Southern Baptist individual congregations running themselves. It's the Southern Baptist Convention. So there's at least a body. There's at least an overall body. Maybe they don't issue like dictates or anything like that. But I mean, once again, we just said it earlier. They had to get together and decide whether to renounce their involvement in slavery and everything like that. So obviously, there is some form of authority.
Can either of you tell me the principal reason behind the Southern Baptist Convention?
I
Like
can't.
what's it made for? What's the main thing that they do?
What do you
I don't
mean?
know. I don't know what. I mean,
What
I'm sure it's just to like define rules and like keep everyone updated.
So the Southern Baptist Convention doesn't actually have the power to tell an individual congregation what to do. So that's a misconception, because we've been talking about Protestant denominations that have a hierarchy and that have overlying bodies. The Southern Baptist Convention is not that. The primary job of the Southern Baptist Convention is mission work. That's really the crux of the matter. And yes, there's a convention every year, and people send pastors to it, and there's just like conferences, and people keep up to date. But
From
the
what I'm
SBC
reading, they also like plant churches and stuff. They like go out and I mean, it's still I guess it's considered missionary work.
Like I said, the SBC cannot tell an individual church what to do. Now, the SBC can like kick a church out of the convention, but that's about it. And like, and that's when you have independent Baptist church. So and that's independent church, independent Baptists also kind of get like a bad rap, because a lot of people think, oh, you're an independent Baptist, you're freaking crazy and radical. No, all independent Baptist churches means is that you're not part of any convention. And yes, the Southern Baptist Convention is the biggest convention of Baptists in the country, but there are other Baptist conventions out there, like
I'm sure,
Presbyterian Baptist Convention, right? So, but to be part of a convention, all that means is that you're giving money to the convention to support missionaries.
So
And
I want to make something clear. And excuse me, Benny. I'm sorry. I thought you were done.
go ahead.
That's my bad, bro. So I want to make something a little bit clear in this particular situation. When I went into the research for this episode, I had no feelings one way or the other about the denomination that raised me. Okay,
Right.
none at all, because I don't even remember most of the church services. You know what I mean? I was very young. So I don't remember a lot of it. I went to Sunday school with Southern Baptist when I was a kid, and that was fine. And when I was a teenager, and that was all good, no big deal. I had no feelings either way. The history is what bothers me to my core, because as I said before, and it wasn't meant as a parting shot. It was meant actually as like honestly my analysis, which is that they have the Southern Baptists, not Independent Baptists, not Northern Baptists, not any other Baptists, the Southern Baptists have magically somehow found a way always to be always on the wrong side of history every single time. And evangelicals right now as we speak, have all rallied. This is not a political podcast, but they have rallied around Trump, and Trump has shown himself on multiple occasions to be completely incompetent. And they're pulling a lot of strings when it comes to him as well. And so I believe that this will also result in them being on the wrong side of history. And they also reject minorities, even if on paper it says they don't, they do. And how? They had to formalize accepting minorities into there, and like the dude, it was like the 70s.
I did read whenever they did allow a black church, it was Black Baptist. They still had to have a white minister overlooking and making sure it's still good.
They did. They did. I forgot about that. But yes, their feelings on minorities are not exactly great. I can't say too much about the homosexual thing because that's really fairly standard across the Abrahamic religions. But it's just I don't know, man. Like I don't know, man. Maybe you're right. Maybe saying that I completely like reject the ideas of a group of people that supported slavery and preached to keep slaves docile and did all this other really bad stuff, and then on top of that raped kids. I completely reject that. I mean, maybe I'm in the wrong here. I don't feel like I am though.
I'm sorry.
No, it's okay, man. Go ahead. What's up?
No, go ahead. Like I want you to get it all out.
No, I'm done. I'm done. I promise.
I mean, I am in no way justifying the fact that in this particular, I'm no way justifying that the Southern Baptist Convention has a sketchy history and its share of scandals throughout history. I'm not denying that at all. I'm not justifying it. I'm not justifying that they're right for the whole mistreatment of minorities in its past. Like, I'm not. What I am saying is this: if we're gonna sit here and hold an organization's past against it, well, if we're gonna sit here and hold a Protestant church's past against it, or any Christian church, including the Catholic Church, then let's not go to church. The denomination has done something equally crappy. You think the Catholics didn't have slaves back in the day? You think the Anglicans didn't have slaves? Like, it's yes, people are crappy, and this is where grace comes in. People are crappy, and people will fail. Unfortunately, rape is a thing. I wish it wasn't. I really do. Unfortunately, statutory rape is a thing. I wish it wasn't, but it is, and people will commit those atrocities. Unfortunately,
Hmm.
because there is evil in this world.
Do
I
you
just think that
remember?
to say that.
Do you
Let me just say this
remember?
one time.
Okay, go ahead, buddy.
I just say that to stigmatize and demonize one particular Protestant organization because of a shady past, it's unfair, because everybody has done it, and I'm not justifying those acts. I'm just saying, like, it's just not fair to do that to the, in this particular case, the SBC.
Okay. So, do you recall the not too long ago the Presbyterian sex scandal?
Yes.
Okay. What about the Methodist sex scandal?
I don't know if there
I didn't know there
one.
was one. I didn't even know.
Okay, cool. What about any of the other ones we've been talking about? Are you saying every denomination has had slaves and sex scandals? Because I don't think that's
Yes.
true.
No,
I
it's
don't
totally
think-
true.
The thing is I, believe it or not, I actually go pretty in depth on the research, and in a lot of these guys, I have not been able. Jehovah's Witness sex scandal. Now we could talk about the Mormons if you wanted to, because they've got some problems in that aspect. But the thing is that for the most part, I don't see. The truth is that I don't see, for most denominations, them like doing anything that causes any act of harm. They're just kind of doing their thing and doing it the best they can, and maybe occasionally they have some stuff that doesn't align with what I would consider my moral beliefs. That's why I'm not a part of their religion. You know what I mean? And that's fine. Like, it's
Yeah.
not my job to tell anybody what to believe or what is right or what is wrong. That is for you to determine. But the thing is that when it comes to specifically Catholicism and baptism, Southern baptism, excuse me, when it comes specifically to those guys, you cannot ignore the long histories of bad stuff. I'm not saying that no Presbyterian minister or whatever, the person is, has never raped somebody. I'm not saying that no Methodist has ever had a slave. I'm not saying anything like that. What I'm saying is that as a whole, the organization, to me, and this includes Catholicism, just seems really, 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 really outside of the range. I mean, the Catholic Church gave over the names of the Jewish people to Hitler for heck's sake. You know what I mean? Like, that, it's mind-blowingly morally inept. You know what I mean?
No, and it's evil. 100%. It is 100% evil. Like I said, every denomination has committed some type of moral and evil atrocity.
Okay, I'll accept that. I
Whether
don't
the right,
I don't know if
whether
they're as bad as Southern Baptists or Catholics, but okay, that's cool. Anything? Go ahead.
I mean, just to say that as bad. You know what I'm saying? Like, I'm pretty sure if we start digging, we can pull up Methodist ministers who have touched kids.
I already,
Like, we can
yeah,
sit
I
here.
found one on
Yeah.
accident. I was just
Yeah,
trying
no,
to look
can
up
we-
all of them.
Can we dig up thousands of them though?
I'm
Because
sure we could.
Well, for
it's
Southern
a matter
Baptist,
it's a matter of scale.
it says 700 on the Southern Baptist. I'm not sure what the Catholic number was.
It is a
Catholics was
matter of
thousands.
scale. It's definitely a matter of scale, because Catholics, there's more Catholics in the world there are Presbyterians. There are more Baptists in this country. There are, you name it. So yes, it is a problem of scale. I just don't think that I don't think that it's fair to single a particular group over the other out, because everybody did evil, not justifying it, but to just say, oh, by the way, these guys are more evil than these other guys because they did really crappy things to other people when everybody else did.
I understand where you're coming from.
I just
I'm
don't think
not.
it's
I'm not even
fair.
saying you're wrong. I'm just saying like my compass, and maybe I shouldn't bring in my compass into what is an educational podcast. But my compass, it says if you supported the KKK and slavery, like I just want nothing to do with you. That's what it says. But that's I understand what you're saying, and also that was far back in the past. I mean, today we're in the present, and Southern Baptists aren't out there like killing black people and like killing homosexuals and stuff like that. They're not out there right now, guys. Please don't take me to say that like I think that every person who's Southern Baptist is a racist or a homophobe or like or a child molester or something like that. I'm not saying that at all, even slightly, not at all. I'm saying that when you decide to go find a denomination that you want to be a part of, and you're trying to find whatever interpretation of God reaches your heart and helps you find the salvation that you need in order to find whatever you need in the afterlife. I'm saying make sure you look into the history. And Benny is absolutely correct. None of them are perfect. All of them have had issues. All of them they've been formed and they've been created and they've been carried on by humans, and humans are fallible. Okay. So make sure when you're looking for somebody, like when you're looking for a group to belong to and be a part of, make sure you do the associated research so that you know. Because I was Southern Baptist for years and I had no idea. I had no idea. And that's what a lot of this is, Benny. Please understand. It's actually shock, because I called myself Southern Baptist in public. And now I understand that that meant me saying I call myself something that had a history of, racism and all that good stuff. And I'm not happy about it. I'm not stoked on it.
You call
Um,
yourself an American?
and that is an entirely different issue. But
And the reason
that
and
is
the
an
reason
entirely different
and the
issue.
well
But I agree. I agree
well,
100% with
and
you.
the reason I say that is because you were a service member, and by the way, I've never told you this, but thank you so much for your service. Thank you so much for serving our
Absolutely.
country and
Absolutely.
for enabling me to be free. Right? Thank you so much for that. Like in all seriousness, like honestly, thank you so much for that, Devin, because I know you were a combat veteran, and thank you.
No
Honestly,
problem,
thank
buddy.
you.
Absolutely.
Here to help.
But back to what I was saying, it's like, do I call myself an American? Do I call myself a Tennessean? Do I call myself a Mexican?
Hmm.
So those statements are huge.
Well, don't you call yourself? Isn't it the Wise Mexican? Is that the Twitter handle?
Yeah.
Is it Wise
Yeah.
Mexican? Okay.
I think so.
You live up to the
But
name.
yeah, that is
Okay. But of course, if you like, yes, if you call yourself any like a part of any bigger group, there is going to be the consequences to that. So I understand what you're saying. Like if I say, "Yo, I'm an American," because I am, then you're saying, "Yo, I'm from a country that back in the day enslaved black people and then became one of the biggest industrialized nations of the world, rolled into the Middle East for no reason and killed a bunch of innocent people for no reason. Here's an American flag, wave it, wave it, wave it. Proud to be an American because at least I know I'm free." Right? I get it, and I agree. But the thing is I didn't choose to be American. I was
right.
born American. That was what I was born into. I did not have a choice. On the other hand, I can choose whether or not to be Catholic or Southern Baptist or not really Judaism, because there's a whole thing with Judaism, but just because of what it takes to become a follower of that. But you know, they're probably not looking for me in Islam either. But I'm just saying, like, well, I don't know. A lot of white people convert to Islam.
Yeah, some. Yeah.
Yeah, it happens.
Yeah.
I'll say a lot, but it does happen.
It does happen. So, but you see what I'm saying, right? I can choose that, and
Right.
I've never formally said on this podcast exactly where I am coming from, and I'm not going to at this point. But I will say that that's a choice you can make, and you have to take the moral implications. In America, as an American, you don't have to take the moral implications any more than if you're British, you were born in Britain and you're a British person and you were raised in Britain, you don't have to worry about what King Philip did to the Knights Templar, because that's just where you were born. You had no choice in the matter. But I do feel like you should pay attention to it if it's something that you join.
Yeah. No, I definitely think that, like, yes, I would agree with you. Like, definitely do your history lesson, and learn about the roots of whatever organization that you join. That being said, there are things that trump that. For example, Like I said, I've never been Baptist. I've never been Southern Baptist in my life. But let's say that I moved somewhere where there just was no Presbyterian church for whatever reason, and the only church around is the Southern Baptist Church. And I know that they have a shady history with racism. But in my opinion, they're the more biblically solid church around. So what trumps what? And not just with Baptists, but with really with any organization you choose. Like when you get a job, when you make friends, when you get married, you have to prioritize like what trumps what, like what good trumps what evil, and vice versa.
I mean, yeah, it's a little bit easy for me to say because I'm a little bit more loosey goosey on the whole faith thing. So
Yeah.
the a little bit easier for me to say that I would just not join the church, But that's simple. That's simple because I don't worry so
and
much about
and
that
that
stuff.
is and that is 100% fine. Like if you're like, yo, I'm not down with the Southern Baptist Church because it's passed, so I'm just gonna go join another church, and that's fine. Like you making, like I said, I'm not Southern Baptist, and the reason why I'm not Baptist is because I believe that the Presbyterian model is more biblical than the Baptist model, like the church government, and that's fine. But I'm just not down with demonizing uh, groups like that, I guess is what I'm trying to say.
Yeah, neither am I, bud. Okay. So the question then is where these guys are going. Like, do you guys think that? Do you think? And we'll go back to all of them. So Presbyterian, we don't have to like go individually, but just as a whole, because this is kind of the last one that we have for Christianity. Besides, if you want to go back and kind of clean up the dust left on the ground after the dustpan, which I would like to do.
Yeah, that'd be fine.
Where
Sure.
do Christianity as a whole? Where do you think it's going? I mean, I don't think
Yeah.
it'll ever die. You know what
No,
I
I
mean?
don't think it'll die, but like we were saying in an earlier episode, I think it's going to go away for the most part. I'd say the numbers are going to dwindle pretty fast after maybe not in my lifetime, maybe not even my kids' lifetime, but
Yeah.
probably like my great grandkids will probably see a
I
lot,
don't.
like if
Yeah.
even. But
They,
go ahead.
no, I'm sorry. You finished?
I was just gonna say it's. I always bring it back to Japan because like they had Christianity brought in, but then they had industrialization and the language barrier, so then it kind of died down, and then now it's just pretty much Shinto. So I think because that's what they mostly believe was Shintoism, and I think America is. I don't want to say more secular, but what's not. I don't want to say trending right now, but it seemed to be more accepted than Christianity. So I think it's going to go more secular, and
Yeah.
it's never going to die, but it will be extremely hard to, maybe not hard to find a church, but
Yeah.
you're going to see a lot less numbers in that church.
I think so as well. I mean, I definitely think that Christianity as a whole in the West and in America it's waning. I mean, call it what it is. It's um, people are just not really well. Once again, put this into context. People in general are not as religious. That is a norm in developed countries. The more a country develops, um, the more unreligious, quote unquote, it becomes. So
Yeah.
right now, Christianity is thriving in places like Africa and the third world and Latin America and Central America. It is just popping off.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and so I don't think that there will ever be a point where Christianity is no longer around. I think it's biblical, but the numbers will dwindle. I think maybe in a couple generations, we'll be like Europe is now. There's just not a lot of Christian people in general or religious people in general in Europe. I think that that's where this country is headed. You can call me a pessimist. I don't care.
I think
I believe so too.
I think that one thing that doesn't get enough acknowledgement is actually the fact that get this to you guys who know me decently. Um, this might actually sound kind of weird coming from me, but get this. I think that everybody needs a spirituality, and that spirituality comes in many forms. And obviously, like we have all the Christian denominations, we have all the other religions. out there, but I think what's not getting nearly enough credit for being actually a spirituality. It's gonna sound so crazy, but I really think it makes sense. Is actually environmentalism and science. So people basically putting all their faith into environmentalism, science, and also into politics is becoming, in my opinion, the new spirituality. It's a higher cause to belong to. It gives you a set of core tenets that you have to follow. Fulfills every single need of spirituality except for the existence of a higher power.
Yeah.
But even in science, like if you take science as a whole, there is a higher power, and that's physics. You know, so I'm that's kind of what I think's happening. And I could be incorrect, but
Oh, I agree 100% on that. And I've said this to some friends, and it didn't get me in trouble. It just sparked a heated debate. I'm gonna say it, and then let me explain it. Everybody's a theologian, saying as a true atheist.
I'm sorry, one more time.
It
I'm
broke
gonna
up
say
there.
that again. Everybody is a theologian.
Hmm.
Every human that is sentient and can reason is a theologian, and there are no such thing as true atheists. And what I mean by that is like the human experience is that humans have the tendency to worship something. Humans have the tendency. This is part of what makes us different than animals. Not only that we're self-aware and that we can reason, but humans are religious by nature. We want to worship something. We want to ascribe what we cannot explain to something, to a higher power. Think about it in the Bible. When Moses went up the mountain to receive the 10 commandments from God, when he came down the mountain, what did he find? The people of Israel had forged a golden bull,
A golden
a
bowl, yeah.
golden, and they wanted to worship that. So they had, you know what I'm saying? Like humans have the tendency to want to worship something. And then to take it to the next level, humans have the tendency to want to worship something tangible, which is what makes Christianity, Judaism, and Islam so different, and Buddhism, because we don't worship something. We don't worship something tangible. Whereas like in Hinduism and in a lot of traditional African mythologies and in Greek mythologies, you worship that statue, you feed the statue, you give the statue food. Um, and so that's what I'm getting at. And even in science, you're right. A lot of people put as much faith as I put in Jesus into science and environmentalism. Not that they like necessarily need it, but that they implicitly, whether they know it or not, worship it. Because even an atheist is a theologian, right? An atheist can quote unquote not believe in God, but an atheist has opinions about God, and an atheist has reasoned, those set opinions about what God is. Thus, in my opinion, anyway, making him a theologian because
Nick,
he
we
has
didn't go
studied
into
God.
atheism.
Oh yeah.
We didn't go into the atheism, man. How do we neglect
In
this?
But I think
later episode,
well, the thing about atheism, as far
Atheism
as
is a belief system.
it
It
is,
has
but as
it,
far
it
as I know, it's not just under Christianity; it's under all of them. Because everyone always thinks atheist just means it's the denial of God as the Judeo-Christian God, but it's every higher power, as far as I know.
and heaven and hell and angels and
Yes, everything like
so on and
that.
so
that's
on.
correct. That's absolutely correct. Okay, cool. We got to get in the atheists during one of the episodes. I would absolutely love to do
Yeah.
that.
If we put it under religion, they'll be mad at us, though.
No, they
I'm just kidding. That
athe-
was
Oh
a
my god.
joke. That was a bad
Well,
joke.
uh,
That's a common misconception about
Yeah,
atheism. It's
no,
like
absolutely.
the thing is,
etymologically speaking, atheism is a religion.
yeah, but
Yeah.
okay, so get this. Have you ever heard that song by Rush? I forget the
love
name. It's like
free
maybe
will.
Limelight or something. No, but it's called he says if you choose not to choose, you still
You
have
still
made
have
a
made a
choice.
choice.
And
That's
I believe
free
that.
will
I believe that 100%. And so
side. Which, by the way, I love that we went on this. I really do. So another thing that so you can edit this in. Uh, another thing that separates Baptists from a lot of other Protestant denominations is that Baptists are pretty low church. They don't really use a lot of liturgy. So a lot of Baptists will say only the Bible. Like that's all you need to read. That's all. That's it. Just the Bible. Um,
Oh yeah,
so like
that's
whereas
true.
Presbyterians, so where we read like the Westminster Confession and all this other liturgy that historically we've had, Baptists in a loose way reject that, and they believe that, because there's not really like a lot of confessions and that they use, whereas like Presbyterians we have catechism and confessions and the Westminster Confession and all these things, whereas Baptists they don't. Baptists don't typically catechize their kids. Um,
Oh, what is
and
catechizing?
basically, catechism is essentially um, a curriculum that is designed to, I mean, ideally kids, to teach kids about God. And what it is catechism is like there's these questions and then there's these answers, and it's supposed to help people um, understand their faith. So there's the Catholic catechism, there's the is it the shorter Westminster Confession? Not the Westminster Confession. The I forgot the name of the catechism that Presbyterians use. The shorter catechism. Anyway, and Baptists don't really catechize their kids, or they don't really have a catechism. They play hardball as far as only the Bible. And the Baptist system of government can vary largely. For the most part, there are most Baptist churches will be single elder led, which means you have one pastor and that's it. Then of course you can have deacons and whatever, and a lot of times like the pastor will vote, you know, the congregation will vote the pastor in or whatnot. But most Baptist churches only have one pastor,
Yeah.
and the congregation, you know, and that's the thing about being Baptist. Like Baptists vary a lot of times from church to church, so that's the nitty gritty about church government.
All right. Well, we've gone into some heavy stuff today.
Oh man, I loved it. I loved it.
Yeah, I do. I love it too. It's worth discussing. Absolutely. Is there anything else that we need to say before we end this episode?
I have something actually I want to say.
Absolutely.
So this will be the formal end of the Christianity episodes, as far as the Lorecast religion section goes. We're probably going to do one more episode with Benny just to kind of talk about some stuff and kind of go into some debate stuff,
Yeah,
because
to
in
go
case
back
you
and
guys
forth. Yeah.
yeah, because in case you haven't told, like, me and Benny, we have fun with this, so we're gonna do one of those. But we hope that this section, as far as Christianity, because honestly, I don't know which one the next one we're gonna be doing is. We haven't talked about it yet, but I hope that the Christianity section has been very helpful. I hope it has pointed out to you things that maybe you didn't know before, or things that you found interesting and want to do more research on. I hope that if you're a follower of one of the of the sections that we talked about, I hope that we did it justice, and that we, approached it with something resembling an even hand and with intelligent discourse. There was a lot of goals for this, and I feel like it's been a successful experiment,
Oh yeah.
and it's gone off the rails in some interesting ways and along the way, but that's fine. Um, but we hope that we sincerely hope that it's been educational and interesting and helpful to you on your spiritual journey. And I'm looking forward to now doing something, and that is that most people in America, and therefore most people that will listen to this, are going to be Christian or something along those lines. I'm looking forward to teaching and getting educated myself about more of the stuff that's outside of normally what would be
Yeah,
American.
absolutely.
You know, um, so we're going to be getting into that. I don't know if it's Judaism. I don't know if it's Islam. I don't know if it's paganism. I don't know which one it's going to be, but we're just going to go down the line and hit them all, my friends. We're going to hit them all. At the end of this podcast, you're going to be able to talk competently about anybody. And I'm very excited to see it. So I would like to formally thank Benny for his contributions. Um, Obviously a very intelligent guy, and we will be bringing him back. He is welcome to come back anytime he wants, pretty much, as far as I'm concerned.
Very smart. Very
Um,
intelligent.
I'm not that smart. I'm really not.
Oh, Jesus, stop. Okay. Doth protest too much. Take your compliment. Anyway, no, I'm kidding. I don't even know where that quote came from. I just know I've heard it before. So we're happy to have we hope we helped, and we hope we brought a little bit of light into your life and gave you a little bit of education, something interesting to think about. And that's really all I had to say about the matter. So
Yeah,
what do you guys
no,
what
I
do you guys
agree. I
got?
feel like all the tandems we win is like the
Yeah,
onion ring at the bottom of the French fry.
absolutely.
bag.
I will. Yeah, we've gone through a lot of stuff. Maybe I will like try and compile all the episodes and like get a lot of the big stuff and put it all into one video. So like, if you want to just get like an overview of everything we've talked about, maybe watch the compilation. Or if you want to go into nitty gritty of each individual one, we'll have like each individual episode available. I will also, this is a promise, this is not like me speculating, but I will put all of the videos that are related to Christianity into one playlist on YouTube. I will also try and do that on Twitch as well. I don't work with Twitch all that much, but I'll put them into a playlist as well. So that way it's categorized for you all who want to listen to this afterwards. That's all I had to say.
Alright.
That
Yeah.
was mine was more about the mechanics of what we've done, but yeah.
Well, I think this is it, right?
I think so, absolutely. I do know you both want to do an episode where we kind of like debate some of the stuff that's gone on.
I don't want to call it a debate episode because like I honestly I can honestly tell, besides some stuff that you guys have a good understanding of, I pretty much implicitly agree with everything that Benny said. But and you as well, Nick, of course. But the thing is that I think that there's nothing more awesome than studying something and caring about something and putting your time into something and meeting your match. In fact, actually meeting somebody who's superior to you. So Benny's superior to me at this stuff.
No, dude, don't say that.
Sorry, bro.
Oh
It's
my
true.
gosh! Imagine bringing like Billy Graham or something onto this though.
Oh, I
He'd
would
kill
tear
us.
him.
He'd kill us all.
But the thing is that I don't. So it's not like I want to yell at Benny and be like, "You're wrong and stupid." It's just I want to kind of go back and forth, so people can kind of hear both sides of an argument, and for lack of a better term, in some cases, play devil's advocate. Man, we didn't even talk about hell or Satan really at all.
We didn't. Just right.
I thought we did when it came to like certain ones.
Well, we talked about the harrowing. We talked about that. But I was actually reading about the harrowing today, and apparently there were some problems with it. We'll get into that.
Yeah,
It was fun. It was have you ever read The History of Hell?
No, I have.
I have a
not.
little bit.
It's a great book. It's fabulous. Anyway, okay,
But
we're
like,
wrapping this up.
I know.
We're
Yes,
gonna,
I know. The next video. I mean, you want to call it a cleanup, right? Like a cleanup of everything that we've done. So maybe we like touch on that.
Yeah, we'll touch on that in the cleanup
Absolutely.
episode.
Absolutely.
Coming out.
But other than that, gentlemen, it has been an absolute 100% pleasure. Thank you for allowing me to take part in this. Also, everybody, if you are not listening to Normal Lorecast, which also features Benny and Nick, and also a couple of other awesome people, you should. And so I strongly suggest checking out their stuff. I get to see their behind the scenes little text when they go back and forth on what they're going to talk about. I get to see that all the time, and it makes me happy to my soul. So make sure that you check those guys out. Make sure you check out Lorecast. Not just because I know everybody just wants to listen to me talk on and on and on and on forever, but these guys also contribute too. Okay,
Yeah, this is a.
I'm joking.
No, this is fine. This has been a very long episode. Thank you for watching the whole thing if you do. But there should be an edited version where there's some stuff cut out. But we do hope that if this has spoken to you, that you, like Devin was saying, if this is something that you want to pursue, if Christianity seems like a fit for you, make sure you do your history. That goes with anything though. Make sure you do your history lessons, and make sure that what we have said actually resonates with you. Don't just make a decision on a whim. That's not what we are trying to do as well. We're not trying to force you into it, but also not trying to get you to make a decision on a whim. Make sure that you feel it in your soul and in your heart, and be true to yourself with what you have heard, and make sure it resonates with you personally. That's like the last thing I really have to say.
And I would like to actually have one parting thing. I think Benny has something to say too. But
I'm good.
I
Okay.
think that what's up?
I was saying that I'm good. I don't really have anything else
Okay.
to say.
Beautiful.
So we'll wrap up right after you're done.
Nice. Oh, I get the last part. Okay, cool. So get this. I think that whatever path leads you to your spiritual fulfillment is a good one. That's all I want to say.
All right. Well, that'll do it for this episode of Lorecast. Religion. We just finished up Christianity. Thank you again to Devin and Benny. Thanks to Benny for being our guest and Devin for being a fantastic co-host on this adventure.
Thank you, sir.
Obviously, check out, like I always say at the end of every episode, be sure to check out Devin. You can find him at beat'embook.com. And Benny, you can find him on Twitter at WiseMexican96, I think.
6?
I think so. I think so. 94. There you go. There we go. Wise Mexican 94. Thank you guys so much for watching. And like we always say, be sure to check out regular Lorecast whenever you can. We should be going live on Sundays. Thank you guys so much for watching, and we'll see you guys in the next episode.